"Watch it, old man," one of the teenagers snarled, deliberately bumping into 90-year-old Arthur Green, sending him stumbling off the curb and into the busy street. Horns blared. Arthur, a decorated veteran of 3 wars, caught his balance just in time, his heart pounding not from fear but from a sudden cold rage. The teens just laughed, high-fiving as they swaggered off. 20 minutes later, as they were still congratulating themselves in a nearby alley, the alley entrance was suddenly blocked by 2 imposing figures in Marine Corps dress blues, followed by the distinct, disciplined sound of marching boots. If you believe respect for elders, especially our veterans, is non-negotiable type honor below. Arthur Green had lived 90 years, and most of them had been dedicated to service. He'd enlisted as a boy, lying about his age to fight in World War II, then stayed in, serving through Korea, and 1 tour in Vietnam, before finally retiring as a master gunnery sergeant in the United States Marine Corps. His small apartment was filled with carefully preserved mementos, faded photographs, service commendations, a shadow box displaying his medals, medals he never wore but cherished as reminders of the men he'd fought alongside, the sacrifices made. His body was frail now, his steps slow and aided by a simple wooden cane, but his eyes still held the clear, direct gaze of a man who had faced down death and never blinked. He lived a quiet life, mostly keeping to himself, his days punctuated by walks to the local park and visits to the library. He didn't ask for much, just a little peace, a little respect. He was on his usual afternoon walk, heading towards the bakery for his weekly treat, a single eclair, when he encountered the group of teenagers. They were a familiar sight in the neighborhood, a pack of 4 or 5 youths, usually found loitering, their boredom often manifesting as petty vandalism or casual intimidation of passers-by. Arthur usually gave them a wide berth, not out of fear, but to avoid unnecessary confrontation. Today, however, they were blocking the narrow sidewalk outside the bakery, sprawled across a bench, their legs stretched out, forcing pedestrians to step into the gutter. Arthur approached, intending to politely ask them to make way. "Excuse me, lads," he began, his voice a little raspy with age. "Could I trouble you to let an old soldier pass?" The apparent leader of the group, a tall youth with a sneering expression and a backwards baseball cap, looked Arthur up and down with contempt. "An old soldier, huh? What are you, 100? His companions snickered. "Just trying to get to the bakery," Arthur said, ignoring the jibe, his hand resting on the head of his cane. "If you wouldn't mind." "Mind?" the leader echoed mockingly. "Yeah, I think we do mind. This is our bench, Grandpa. Find another route." He deliberately stretched his legs further, completely blocking the path. Another teen chimed in. "Yeah, maybe you should just go home and take a nap before you fall over." Arthur felt a familiar stirring of disciplined anger, the kind he hadn't felt in years, but he kept his voice level. "There's no need for rudeness, son. Just asking for a little courtesy." "Courtesy?" the leader scoffed. He stood up, towering over Arthur, clearly intending to intimidate. "You want courtesy? Maybe you should show some respect to your betters." He then did something utterly unexpected and wantonly cruel. As Arthur tried to step around him, the teen deliberately stuck out his foot, tripping the old man, while simultaneously giving him a hard shove on the shoulder. "Watch it, old man," he snarled, as Arthur, his balance lost, stumbled precariously off the high curb, his cane flying from his grasp, and landed heavily but thankfully upright in the path of oncoming traffic. Horns blared furiously. A car swerved violently to avoid him. Arthur, his heart hammering, scrambled back towards the curb, his old reflexes surprisingly sharp. The teenagers just roared with laughter, pointing, finding the near tragedy hilarious. "Look at him dance," one shouted. "Maybe he learned that in the war." They high-fived each other. Then, seeing a few angry glares from other pedestrians who had witnessed the event, they sauntered off down a nearby alleyway, still chuckling, leaving Arthur shaken and humiliated on the edge of the busy street. A kind woman rushed forward to help Arthur retrieve his cane and ensure he was all right. "Those dreadful boys," she exclaimed. "Are you hurt, dear?" Arthur, though his hip ached from the stumble and his dignity was severely bruised, managed a shaky smile. "Just startled, ma'am. Thank you for your kindness." He brushed himself off, his hands trembling slightly. The casual cruelty, the utter lack of respect, cut deeper than any physical ache. He had faced enemy soldiers who showed more honor than those boys. He picked up his cane, the laughter of the departing teens still echoing in his ears. He decided against the eclair. His appetite was gone. He just wanted to go home. But as he turned to leave, something stopped him. Not just the pain in his hip, but a deeper, older instinct. He was a Marine. Marines didn't just walk away from an unprovoked assault, not even at 90. He wouldn't confront them himself. His fighting days were long over. But there were other ways. He knew the neighborhood. He knew the alley they'd disappeared into led to a dead end, a small enclosed courtyard behind a derelict warehouse, a favorite hangout for local troublemakers. He also remembered something else. The local Marine Corps recruiting station was only 2 blocks away. And the gunnery sergeant in charge, a young hard-as-nails Marine named Gunny Miller, had a particular soft spot for old vets from his beloved Corps, especially Wat Puti and Korean War era. Hank had met him once at a VFW event. He fumbled for his old simple cell phone. He didn't have Gunny Miller's direct number, but he had the main recruiting station line. He dialed, his fingers surprisingly steady now, a cold resolve settling in. "Marine Corps Recruiting, Sergeant Peterson speaking. How can I help you?" "Sergeant Peterson?" Arthur said, his voice low but clear. "This is Master Gunnery Sergeant Arthur Green, retired. I need to speak with Gunny Miller. It's a matter of immediate concern regarding disrespect shown to the uniform and an assault on an elderly Marine. Location: alleyway behind the old packing plant, corner of Elm and 3rd. There was a brief pause. Then Sergeant Peterson's voice, suddenly sharper, more alert. "Master Gunny, stand by. Connecting you to Gunny Miller now." The phone clicked, and then Gunny Miller's voice, rough and direct, came on the line. "Gunny Miller, who's this?" "Gunny, it's Arthur Green, Master Gunnery Sergeant, retired." "Master Gunny Green, sir. What can I do for you?" The respect in Miller's voice was instantaneous and absolute. Arthur quickly, factually recounted what had just happened. The blocked sidewalk, the insults, the deliberate shove into traffic, the teenagers currently holed up in the dead-end alley. He didn't embellish, didn't ask for retribution, just stated the facts. "They disrespected the Corps, Gunny," Arthur finished quietly, "and they put one of its own in harm's way for a cheap laugh." There was a moment of dead silence on the other end. Then Gunny Miller spoke, his voice like ice. "Master Gunny, are you injured, sir?" "Shaken, a bit bruised, but functional, Gunny." "Understood. Elm and 3rd, you said. The alley behind the packing plant. How many of them?" 4 or 5, young. Mid-teens, I'd guess." "Consider it handled, Master Gunny," Gunny Miller said, his voice now tight with a controlled fury that Arthur recognized well. "You stay clear of that alley. We'll counsel them, Marine Corps style." The line went dead. Arthur knew what Marine Corps style counseling likely entailed, especially when delivered by a motivated Gunny and his young, eager recruits. He found a bench with a view of the alley entrance from a safe distance, sat down and waited. He didn't have to wait long. Less than 10 minutes later, the quiet street was suddenly, almost surreally, filled with the sight of Marines. Not in combat gear, but some in their crisp service Charlies, others in their utility uniforms if they'd been on duty. Gunny Miller, looking like a coiled spring, led a group of about 8 Marines, a mix of recruiters and young poolies, recruits waiting for boot camp, who clearly looked up to him. They moved with the disciplined speed and purpose that was the hallmark of the Corps, not running but covering ground with an intimidating efficiency. They didn't make a sound. The group of Marines reached the mouth of the narrow alleyway. Gunny Miller held up a hand and they fanned out, 2 taking positions to block any escape from the alley's entrance, their expressions grim, their posture radiating an unshakable authority that no mall cop or local police officer could ever hope to emulate. The other 6, led by Gunny Miller, turned and disappeared into the dim confines of the alley. Arthur, watching from his bench, couldn't see what was happening inside, but he could hear, or rather he could hear the abrupt cessation of the teenagers' loud chatter and laughter. A sudden, shocked silence fell. Then, after a moment, he heard Gunny Miller's voice, not shouting, but carrying clearly, each word laced with cold, hard authority. He couldn't make out the exact words, but the tone was unmistakable. The tone of a drill instructor dressing down a particularly witless recruit, a tone that promised swift, unambiguous, and deeply unpleasant consequences for disrespect and stupidity. There were no sounds of physical violence, just that relentless, controlled verbal barrage. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only about 5 or 6 minutes, Gunny Miller's voice stopped. Then another Marine voice started, equally firm, perhaps explaining some finer points of respect for elders, for veterans, for the community. More silence. Then the group of teenagers stumbled out of the alley, one by one. They looked utterly different from the arrogant youths who had swaggered in. Their faces were pale, some looked like they were about to cry, their earlier bravado completely extinguished, replaced by a look of profound, shell-shocked terror. They didn't run. They walked, almost crept out of the alley, avoiding eye contact with anyone, and scurried away down the street as fast as their trembling legs could carry them, looking back over their shoulders as if expecting the wrath of God himself to descend. Gunny Miller and his Marines emerged from the alley, their expressions still stern, but with a hint of grim satisfaction. Gunny Miller spotted Arthur on the bench, strode over, and snapped to a perfect salute. "Master Gunnery Sergeant Green, sir. The situation has been addressed. Those young men have received a thorough orientation on the core values of honor, courage, and commitment, with a particular emphasis on respecting their elders and those who have served." Arthur slowly rose, returning the salute with a steadiness that surprised him. "Thank you, Gunny, and thank your Marines for me." "No thanks necessary, Master Gunny," Miller replied, his eyes still hard. "We take care of our own, always. And we don't tolerate disrespect to the cause or those who built its legacy." He paused. "Are you sure you're all right, sir? Need a ride anywhere? Medical attention?" "I'm fine, Gunny," Arthur said, a small, genuine smile finally touching his lips. "You and your men have already provided the best medicine." Gunny Miller nodded, then turned to his Marines. "All right, Leathernecks, fall in. Back to the station. And good work." The Marines formed up, executed a smart about-face, and marched away with the same disciplined efficiency they had arrived with, leaving the street quiet once more, but fundamentally changed. Arthur watched them go, a warmth spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with the weather. He felt seen, respected. Not like a burden or an invisible old man, but like a Marine. He even felt up to getting that eclair now. The story of the Marine intervention in the alley became a neighborhood legend, whispered with a mixture of awe and amusement. The group of teenagers who had been counseled were reportedly models of politeness for weeks afterwards, giving wide berth to anyone over the age of 60 and developing a sudden, profound respect for military insignia. Arthur Green continued his quiet walks, but now when he passed the Marine recruiting station, there was always a crisp salute from whoever was on duty and a shared nod of understanding. Because the Marine Corps ethos doesn't fade with age or wither with hardship. It endures, and when one of their own is disrespected, the response, even if it's just a few good Marines counseling some errant youths in an alley, is swift, decisive, and unforgettable. Some lines you just don't cross. Ever. Semper Fidelis. Subscribe to my channel if you believe that the bond between those who served is unbreakable and that respect for our veterans is a sacred duty.